Hi, this is Scott Mautz. I am international speaker and author of Leading from the Middle, a playbook for helping managers to influence up, down, and across the organization. I'm a leadership speaker and workshopper, and today you're going to learn 3 powerful things. Number 1, how middle managers are the backbone of any organization and why you should take pride in that role rather than feeling stigmatized. Number 2, you're going to learn what are the kick in the ass challenges that middle managers face, and they might be ones that you're not even aware of. And number 3, you are going to learn how to lead up, down, and across the organization with a great tip to help you out in every direction. So stay tuned, you're going to love it.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. Hey, would you do me a favor? Just send me a quick note. Maybe you can DM me on one of the major social media outlets and tell us what platform you like to listen to us on. Is it Apple Podcasts? Maybe it's Google Podcasts. Maybe it's Spotify. Maybe it's another app altogether. Just let us know. And when you do, tell us what's been one of your favorite episodes. What's been one of the best episodes that you've heard and why you liked it. If you do that, I'm offering a prize. It's about $1,500 worth, so it's a good one. All right, let's begin here. Tell me, what do you need to do to up-level your leadership? Have you considered that? You know, research has shown that there is an ever-expanding decline of the middle class. And this, economically speaking, is a potential disaster. Now, the reason it's the middle class that we need to look at is because it's the middle class that supports a growing economy. So here's what I want you to think about. Have you considered who is the middle class of your organization? Who is driving your organizational economy? You might be surprised to find out. Stay tuned, because that's where we're going on today's show. I'm your host, Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything by transforming meaning into action. If you're curious to know more, simply go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. This episode of Leadership and Loyalty is brought to you in part by our other podcast, Curiosity Bites. Curiosity Bites is the answer to the question, how can we bring people together who completely disagree? This is what your mind, your heart, your soul has been craving. It's your chance to sit in on some real, intense, and deeply meaningful conversations with some of the world's most interesting people. You know, we're talking about neuroscientists. We're talking about neurosurgeons. We're talking about philosophers, physicists. It's pretty wild stuff. If you're really curious about it, I encourage you to go to dovbaron.com and find out how you can sign up for and sink your teeth into the delicious Curiosity Bites. As always, you can find both of the shows on any of the podcast outlets that you listen to. As always, we do need your help in staying relevant, so please get over there. Do us a favor, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. If you are a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. We are honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the podcast, the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. If you are listening in Google Home or Alexa, you can simply say, play Dov Baron podcast. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. In case you don't know, middle management are exhausted. They're the backbone of your organization. And I said at the beginning about the middle class. Well, what I'm talking about here is the middle managers of your organization. They're the ones who keep your economic machine running. The middle management accounts for 25% of the variance in revenues inside of your organization. So what are the unique skills that are often forgotten because they're not too sexy to be a middle manager? there's a pretty good chance that in your race up the ladder, you've forgotten the scope of what it really takes to be in that position. Well, if you were a middle manager, you may be thinking, oh my God, this guy's describing me. Well, in reality, that's not the truth. The truth is, it's my guest today who really understands that world. And his name is Scott Mautz. Now, Scott is a 3-time award-winning author, an international keynote speaker, a former Procter Gamble senior executive who successfully ran several companies, several of the company's largest multi-billion-dollar businesses. Scott is faculty at Indiana University's Kelley School of Business and Executive Education, and Executive Education. He's been named as CEO Thought Leader by the Chief Executive Guild and Top 50 Leadership Innovators by Inc.com, where he is a top columnist whose articles garnered 1.5 million monthly readers. That's a couple more than me. Scott is the CEO of Profound Performance. And ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the author of the best-selling book on middle management, Leading from the Middle, a playbook for managers of influence up, down, and organization, returning champion, Mr. Scott Mautz.
So glad to be here with the King of Canada. What can I say? The Vanguard of Vancouver.
The Vanguard of Vancouver. Okay.
So great to be here. So great to be here again.
Always great to talk to you, Scott. I'm always enjoying our conversations because you really get it. I mean, you're a CEO of your own organization. You speak to organizations around the world. You speak at powerful institutions, but you've also come up through the ranks. You've done the middle management thing. And of course, that's where we're going to go today. But I always like to start with this question. In the context of leadership and leadership development, what is the question we should be asking, that our listeners should be asking, but often they're not, that our viewers are like, well, I think this is the problem, but they're asking the wrong question. What is the right question? What's the question we're not asking?
I think leaders have to be asking, and this won't be a surprise given today's topic, which is, what am I going to do to keep the middle managers in my organization, the backbone, as you said, the people that make up 25% of the variation of revenue in the company, 3 times that of people who are in innovation roles. What am I doing to keep growing their skills, to keep them happy, and to keep them a part of my organization? Because that is the lifeblood of any organization. And we glance by them far too often, Dov. It's almost like a natural thing that we do. So that's what I would hope that leaders start asking themselves.
So in that context, there's a lot of this stuff around A players and superstars and all this kind of stuff, and I think you're right. I think that the middle managers get forgotten because there's also 2 kinds in my mind, and you can certainly correct me because you're more knowledgeable about it than I am, but there's 2 sort of kinds of middle managers. And one are these very ambitious, they're aspiring to go up the ladder. And we notice them because they're on that fast track and they're driven and they're ambitious. And then there are those, as you might call them, backbone middle managers who are not really aspiring for much more. They don't really want to, but they are so good at what they do, and I think you're right. I think we forget them. So in this time, and we're going to talk a lot more about this, but in this time of the Great Resignation, where people are walking away from their careers, more than 1 million people in the US in 1 year alone, many of those people are not, we think about, okay, well, they're service workers, and they are, a lot of them, but a lot of them are middle managers just going, you know what, I'm sick of being taken for granted.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The dichotomy you paint is exactly right, Dov, and we tend to just kind of blow by them. And pop culture doesn't help any, right? Look at movies like Office Space and shows like The Office, cartoons like Dilbert. We paint middle managers as these buffoons, when in truth, a middle manager is anybody who has a boss and is a boss, and to do their job well, they have to do it from the messy middle and be able to lead up, down, and across the organization. And what's interesting is they're not so hard to categorize. Like you said, Dov, you gave a dichotomy that's entirely accurate. Here's another dichotomy. We find that the difference between successful middle managers or ones that don't do as well, it's really simple. It comes down to one sentence. Are they looking at their job as, my job is to assist success, or is it to avoid failure? They have very two different outcomes. And I know you know this from your experience, when you assist success, that shows up like investing in your people, being willing to take risks, sticking your neck out there for them, making a damn decision. When you're avoiding failure, it's the opposite. It's micromanaging. You're indecisive. You carry parallel paths. You're a perfectionist. And that simple dichotomy can kind of bring into light, if you want to be a successful middle manager, sometimes it's as simple as choosing to assist success. And that's what I get into in my book, Leading from the Middle.
And I know that you address this in the book extensively. And I think that one of the things that we've got to look at here is, I like to use metaphors because I think people get those analogies.
Yeah.
And that is, if your mom and dad are scrapping and you're an adult and you try to get in the middle, you're going to be the one who's hated. And then oftentimes, and that's the job of a middle manager. They're dealing with the, quote, children, meaning the other employees who are below them, and they're dealing with the parents who are above them. And they've got to kind of move between these two worlds, and in the process, not get fired themselves.
That's
like,
right.
You know what, after you and I were talking about this last time you and I had a conversation about this, I was thinking, what a shit job. Like, that's what I was thinking. I'll be honest. Like, I was thinking, like, what a shitty job. Like, is there a more thankless position? Because, you're always walking this horrible fine line that sort of in many ways seems to facilitate the avoidance of failure.
Yeah, I think that's right. Just to pile onto that, and then we can turn to the positive side of that equation.
Of course,
to give the viewers hope. Let me just pile onto that. Can I share with you a very brief but fun study that I encountered?
Please.
That I detailed in the book. I think your viewers and listeners will enjoy this. I think you will too. So, in the nature of my job now, let me ask you this first. Have you ever heard the term, Dove, monkey in the middle?
Of course.
Right? It comes from a childhood game where kids stand in a circle, and it's a game of keep away, right? The poor little guy in the middle, the monkey, stands there, and people try to throw the ball, and they keep it away from him. I hadn't thought about that term for years until the nature of my work brought me into contact with a really interesting piece of research from the universities of Liverpool and Manchester and in England. And they
I know those places very well.
Yeah, right. Okay, so some really
in my hometown.
really talented researchers there. And I found out about this piece of work that was done where they were studying a huge pack of monkeys, over 600 monkeys in the monkey structure. And they were studying them to learn about the social behavior of monkeys and to record it. They would record when they would slap each other, when they would nurture each other, when they would groom each other. And all the while, they were pausing to record and collect samples of the fecal matter, which I'll leave that duty up to you, literally, Dove. I'll pass on that. But they would gather the fecal matter.
You're so good to me.
See what I did there? They would gather the fecal matter and then measure it for levels of stress hormones. And I think you know where this is going. Here's what they found. The monkeys that were by far the most stressed physically and emotionally in the monkey pack were not the ones that were the king orangutan, not the new chimpanzees that probably already had an iPhone and were spending too much time on it, but it was the monkeys in the middle of the hierarchy that had to manage up, down, and across the organization. They were the ones by far the most physically and emotionally stressed. And guess what? It turns out the same thing is right amongst the monkey's slightly less bright cousins, the human being, because we've seen over and over in studies that the bottom 5% of employees in a company in terms of engagement and happiness and fulfillment, they're not the people that have poor performance ratings. They're not the people that had just started in their jobs, so they didn't know what the heck they're doing. They're people that actually have good performance ratings. They just happen to have been in the company for about 10 years. In other words, the middle manager. My way of saying, you're exactly right. From the surface, it could seem like a really exhausting and draining job. And I think it's why not enough people write about it, because it's not as sexy to do it.
Well, and on top of that, I think that, it's like we talked about, it's easy to forget them. it is difficult because there is so much stress. Yeah. And then when you look at it on that surface level, it's like, well, why would I want to be that? That doesn't make any sense to me. But it, as with any career, and I know that that's why Leading from the Middle, your book, is so powerful and useful and practical, is because there is a good side to this, and there is a powerful side to this, and it's more than think happy thoughts and be in a positive mindset. So, what's the upside of this tightrope walking, seemingly most stressful job?
Yeah, first of all, it's knowing that the data is undeniable. It's undeniable. The middle manager is the key to organization success. In fact, a really smart 5-year Stanford study determined that replacing just one poor middle manager with just an average middle manager was the equivalent of adding a net new person to a team in terms of performance. So the upside in performance is incredible. And for the middle manager themselves, if they can just remember that your job there, you don't have to feel physically and emotionally stressed. You don't have to suffer from a self-identity crisis, which happens when you wear so many hats and you have to transition between roles all the time, and you get really burnt out from having to transition between roles all the time. The upside is once you can master that, we find it's incredibly rewarding to know that you're the one that has to think like an engineer and feel like an artist.
Oh,
you're the
that's
one,
good.
Yeah, that has to carry the long-term flame and the short-term flame, thinking, on the business and in the business. You're the one that has to be the lighthouse to keep people off the rocks and the North Star. And that is a skill set and a duality that only the middle managers in an organization can claim. And we see in our research that once they do and they embrace that, it is really, really powerful from a sense of personal fulfillment.
Well, there's a sense of personal fulfillment, but a sense of also self-empowerment of understanding the vitalness of who you are. When we spoke about it last time, and I went away and I was, I think about our conversation. I was like, well, what's important here? And I thought, who is the middle manager outside of a corporate structure? And I thought, I couldn't think of one for a while. And then I went, oh my God, it's the entrepreneur. Because the entrepreneur changes hats all the time. And I know in my private work, I've dealt with leaders who are terrible at switching hats.
That's right.
Awful at it. They just want to bark orders.
That's right.
But a middle manager is much more likely to have greater empathy, greater compassion, greater communication skills, because as you said, they've had to be the artist and the engineer. They've got to be the subordinate and the boss. They've got to be all of those things. And that is something that entrepreneurs have to deal with every day. But middle managers are getting those skills by virtue of being in that position. So in many ways, it might be the most experientially educated position in the whole thing, in the whole system.
I think it is. And as we had talked before, you're exactly right with entrepreneurs. You still have a board that you have to report to. Unless if you're a solopreneur, you're going to have people that report into you that you have to learn how to, and for sure, you have to influence across over people over whom you have no formal authority when you're an entrepreneur. So I find that the skill set, I think it's why the book is really exploding, because it fulfills an unmet need, Dove. So many people have so much guidance on how to lead from the top and lead from the C-suite. And so many people have so much guidance and so many books on how to succeed in your first 90 days. It's that middle swath that so many people, if they can view themselves as, look, I have a boss and am a boss, even if you're an entrepreneur. And I have to lead in every direction once you agree and admit that and get past the moniker of middle manager, it opens your mind up, especially up to to leading from the middle. The book is an asset to help you to build that skill set.
Well, I mean, I think that, there's these philosophical books that, lead from the front, lead from the back, lead from, I don't know, lead from the fish and chip shop. I mean, this all,
lead from the toilet,
all these different things. But you're right. I think it's a greatly ignored thing. What sort of feedback are you getting from middle managers around it? Do you find that it's speaking to them in a way that they've kind of been ignored?
I think so. I think Dan Pink put a quote right on the front of the book that says the book nails an unmet need, and that's
Mm.
by far the comment. I didn't say that to drop names. If I want to drop names, I'll tell people I'm on Dove Barron's podcast. So the reason
You're
I share
hysterical.
that, yeah, the reason I share that is because I keep hearing that over and over and over again. The subtitle of the book is that it's a playbook for
Mm.
managers to influence up, down, and across. And that was a really intentional choice because
Right.
you can use the word playbook and turn people off because they're going to say it's not sexy, it's not filled with enough stories, it's not inspiring enough. That is not true about this book, by the way. But when you use the term playbook, what I hear back from most people is that you've given me real plays, a prescription for not just it's a nice idea to lead effectively to my boss and my employees and my peers over whom I have no influence, but you've given me the exact prescription and plays on how to do that. I think that's what I'm most proud of because you can't do that without years of research, hardcore research, and decades of experience, much like many of the things you talk about, Dov, right?
So why did you decide to go there? I mean, I get that it's an unmet need. I get that it's, definitely there's somebody needs to be talking to the subject. But why did Scott say, I'm going to step into that void? I'm going to be the one who does that. Why? What was it in you that catalyzed that?
Because I was and am there. And I experienced it in my corporate life, and I know what it felt like to not have the tools and the skills to feel like I could handle what a job that just erodes and wears out so many people. You mentioned it in your opening. I talk in the book about this acronym called SCOPE, and I know acronyms can be overused. I find they're helpful for mnemonics, if nothing else. And I use an acronym in the book called SCOPE, which describes what's so uniquely challenging about the middle manager's job. It's the scope of their job, which it also stands for self-identity. There's conflict. There's omnipotence required. You have to know everything. Your share's down in Peoria, you better know why, right? But the upper manager doesn't need to know that. The new person's too new. The P and the E are physical and emotional. So this set of unique challenges that faces us, I lived those, Dov. I felt that. And I remember wishing, where's my guidance? Where's my help in doing this? It is enough of a challenge just to manage your boss, let alone all the other things that come with leading from the middle. That's why I set out to write this book so many years ago and been on a kind of the journey and want to be the spokesperson of the person that thrives in the middle of an organization.
Because again, it would be, like I said in the intro, it would have been very easy for you to go, yeah, I'm past that.
Yeah.
I'm a CEO of my own company. I'm past that. I've climbed the corporate ladder. I don't need to fuss with that. And I think that many people are in that position and just going, that's why I'm talking about how to be a CEO or how to be a C-suite leader or whatever it is. And I just think there's a certain generosity. I'm going to use that term. I think there's a certain generosity in remembering the shit I went through and saying, I want to hand a shovel to the guy who's in that position and help him to clean up some of that stuff for himself or herself, themselves, so that it's not so difficult. I really appreciate that. I want to get into the scope of the work, and I want to get into the tools with you and the actual steps that you lay out for people as we go into the second half of the show. We're already at the end of the first part of the show, and I want to make sure that people understand where they can reach out to you, find out about the book, and find out about you and all your wonderful resources. So, Scott, please tell our viewers and our listeners where they can find out more about you.
Right on. You can find me at scottmautz.com. That's M-A-U-T-Z, but I'm sure you'll see it in the notes and everything. scottmautz.com. And in fact, if you go to scottmautz.com/free tools, no space in between free and tools, I put together a special gift for Dove Barron listeners. If you do that, scottmautz.com/free tools, you'll get a 30-page companion workbook for free that goes along with my book, Leading from the Middle, a playbook for managers to influence up, down, and across. And if you want to learn more about all my services, my keynoting, the courses I offer, all of that, you can find that at scottmautz.com. So thanks for the chance to tell people.
Absolutely. And of course, we'll make sure that all that is posted in the show notes, as Scott said. We're going to take a break now. We're going to be just one click away, but I want you to just stop for a minute and stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about your middle management. If you're not in middle management, your middle management and the amount of stress they carry for the organization. Sort of think about how you can honor your middle management. We're going to talk to the structure of how to be in that position in the second half in part 2. But right now, I want to just come from a place of let's honor that middle management. Those people doing that job that most of us probably wouldn't want and seems to be pretty thankless a lot of the time. So with that, stay curious, my friends, stay curious, and we'll see you in one click for part 2 of our delicious conversation with Scott Mautz.